Do you have a high yield savings account? Do you want one? How do you know which one is the best? It's not just its yield that's important. So if you want to know what to look for in a high yield savings account, watch this vid. Hey there, welcome to Modern Frugality. My name is Jen and I'm the creator of this channel, and my goal is to help you buy less, earn more, and build wealth so that you can live a life that you love. And so I have exhausted myself with encouraging people to open high yield savings accounts for their emergency fund. Whenever anybody asks, what's the first thing you should do with your money, or when you're trying to get your finances in order, the answer should always be get an emergency fund. Because our worst financial decisions are made out of scarcity and fear and lack. And when you have an emergency fund sitting there with 3 to 6 months worth of expenses, you no longer make those bad decisions out of fear and scarcity and emergency. That is what an emergency fund is for. It gives you the freedom to not make bad decisions. So this is the most important. It's foundational to anything you do in personal finance. And it is really important to not keep your emergency fund in your checking account with your everyday spending, or even in your regular savings account that's attached to your checking account, because you want to have that lump of money sitting where you do not see it. You do not want to see your emergency fund. You want to forget it's there, because out of sight is out of mind and out of your wallet. So you will definitely spend this money if you tend to look at it often. But if you just keep it somewhere where you never look at it, then it will be there when you need it. And so I recommend a high yield savings account for a lot of different reasons. So we'll go through those, and I will show you what to look for when you are getting a high yield savings account. First, if you are trying to get your finances in order, then definitely get the link in my description for my financial wellness workbook. It's absolutely free. It'll help you put every crumb of your financial cookie on the table and help you get organized so that you can do this first step and then all the steps that come after it. So definitely the link for that is in the description. First, what is a high yield savings account? So it's just a regular savings account that you will open at a bank. It's FDIC insured. That's what you want to look for in one. It's FDIC insured up to typically $250,000. And the high yield part of it just means that it earns a little bit more interest than a typical checking and savings account at, say, a brick and mortar bank. We used to be able to get really high interest, so the high was actually what I would consider high. Nowadays, high interest savings accounts, it's moderate interest. It's not that much. It is a little bit of a hedge against inflation, but really your goal with your emergency fund isn't to be making money or to earning money. You're still going to want to add money to it every year to keep up with inflation. There's never going to be an FDIC insured savings account that will give you inflation or beat inflation. So you're always going to have to keep adding money to that. But this is why we say 3 to 6 months and not a year plus. So those are the two main things about a high yield savings account. It's an interest bearing savings account. And so FDIC insured just means that your money in there is protected. So like money invested in the stock market, that's not typically insured. So you could technically lose everything. If you've invested in cryptocurrency or single stocks recently, you may have experienced that. But there are definitely safe ways to invest that mitigate that risk. But again, it's not insured. So with higher risk comes higher reward, and you can get growth on that. The reason we like high yield savings accounts is because they offer that little bit of growth and a little bit of protection against inflation, but they're also insured. So what you lack in advantages and growth, you make up for in safety. And that safety is the name of the emergency fund game. So what do you want to look for in a high yield savings account? So the first thing that everyone is going to ask is, what's the highest yield I can get? And while that is important, you do want to look for a high yield account at the time of this recording of at least 0.5%. That's not the most important factor, but you do want to have at least 0.5%. You can easily find something above that. My favorite high yield savings account right now, I'll put a link to it in the description. It's got 0.61%. And so that's on every level. So sometimes they'll advertise a 1% APY high yield savings account, but it's only on balances of 10 or 20,000 plus or something. Or you can get it, but you only get it for, you only get 1% for the first $1,000, and everything beyond that is like 0.1%. So you kind of have to look at the fine print when you're looking at APYs, or annual percentage yields. That's the term for the interest that they use. You have to look at the fine print and make sure that it all evens out to an APY that's at least 0.5%. And so that kind of leads me into the second factor, which is no hoops to jump through. I really hate it when banks say, you can get this high yield, but you have to deposit this much in every month, or you have to have this balance, or you have to be a customer at this place. Like, this isn't a fund that you're going to have long term. So you want to make sure these hoops are things you can sustain long term. And honestly, like, I don't look at my emergency fund at all. I don't do anything to it. So a minimum balance requirement, that's not a deal breaker for me. Like, if I needed to have at least a couple grand to get the APY, fine, whatever. But I want to make sure everything in my account is getting the advertised APY, because that can change at any moment. We saw that in 2020. We were getting 2% APYs, and now they're 0.3, 0.4. So you want to make sure there's no hoops to jump through. Like, I know that there are some accounts that have 1%, 3%, 4%, but what are the hoops? Can you commit to following those rules long term, at least for a couple years? Because you don't want to be switching around to your emergency fund like every year, chasing little bonuses or little APYs. So you just want to make sure that you can commit to whatever those rules are long term, to make sure it's the best route for you. So some checking accounts can offer higher APYs in their savings account. Are you willing to move your direct deposits and all of your money to that bank account to have that savings account, even though you should be keeping your emergency fund separate from your checking? So these are all questions that you have to ask yourself. Personally, I like no hoops to jump through. If there is a obligation to getting the APY, I don't do it. I don't like it. So the one I recommend, it has no hoops to jump through to getting their advertised APY. Next, you want to look at fees. We're in the 2020s. Like, you should not be paying account maintenance fees or any monthly fees. No, if your bank account charges a monthly fee, get out of there. I'm talking to you, big banks. I hate you. So if your bank account charges a monthly maintenance fee and requires you to have like so much money in there at a time, I don't like it for personal reasons. I think it makes banking less accessible to low-income people, even though personally I keep a good amount in my emergency fund. I'm not going to be subjected to that. But the more people with money tolerate taxes and fees on low-income people, the less banks will change, and banking really does need to be changed. So I advocate for choosing banks that don't have fees. And they should offer free ATM withdrawals if they're an online bank, and no minimum balances. So sometimes there's a minimum balance to open, but there's no minimum balance to keep. And so I think there's enough banks now that have no minimum balance that you could really look for that. I don't think mine has a minimum balance, even though that wouldn't bother me. But yeah, and even if it did have a minimum balance, then they would probably charge me a fee. So yeah, I wouldn't have chosen that bank. So yeah, no minimum balances. A minimum to open it is required at some places, but they don't require you to keep that balance. But this is your emergency fund, and so hopefully you're not going to be spending it frequently. But if you do have to wipe out your emergency fund, you don't want to be charged a fee when you are at that lower balance. And the last is bringing it all the way back around. You want it to be FDIC insured. I see a lot of people asking the question, can I invest my emergency fund? Is there a way I can beat inflation with this? And yeah, there is. There's a time and a place to save in a taxable brokerage that beats inflation. Your emergency fund is not one of them. So if you are really aggressive in your investing, then keep a smaller emergency fund. Maybe 3 months is fine for you. But your emergency fund is meant to be a safety net. And so, I mean, think about March 2020. Like, there were people that needed their emergency fund in March and April, and March is when the market was way down. So if there is ever a time where you don't want to be taking money out of the market, it's after a crash or correction. And so you want to wait until your money is back up at the height of the market. But you don't always get that chance if you lose your job in a recession or a pandemic. So think about your emergency fund as a safety net, and don't try to invest it. You can invest so much more money. But so yeah, you want your money to be in an FDIC insured account so that you are sure every penny will be there or more when you go to take it out. Again, I have linked to my current recommendation for a high yield savings account in the description. Go check it out. It meets all of these requirements. I use it personally, and I recommend it to others. But if you already have a high yield savings account and you're just looking to see if you could get something better, but your account meets all of these requirements, don't stress. It's just a savings account. As long as it is separate from your checking and it's holding your emergency fund, it's fine. Don't be trying to chase the high yields of savings accounts. So yours is probably fine. But if you are looking to get a better one or looking to just open one for the first time, then definitely check out my recommendation in the description. And if you liked this video, please subscribe, like, and comment and let me know what you like as your emergency fund. Are you a $1,000 person? Are you a 3-month person? Are you a 6-month? Are you a 12-month? Some people are 12-month emergency fund people. So let me know what kind of emergency fund person you are in the comments. I am personally a 6-monther. So thanks, and I will see you next week.